Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. In Season 2 of Hacks and Hobbies, we're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life who want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. In this episode, I get to speak with Eleanor Bick. She's a German freelance author and illustrator, and I got to follow some of her amazing journey on Twitter. She's been posting some really awesome illustrations of Pokemon and Pokemon trainer instructor conversations, and I was like super fascinated with the level of detail and the level of clarity in these illustrations. And then she also did a little short on the bee's knees, a little TV series that she's working on. And I was like, what, bees? I'm all about bees, with beekeeping and talking about beekeeping on this podcast. So I was like, why not bring her on and learn her journey? So Eleanor, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you for having me here. It's really exciting to be on a podcast for the first time.
Awesome. So this will be your first.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's really fascinating to me is, as a hobbyist myself and a user experience designer myself, so being in design and designing user interfaces and experiences, I never had the opportunity to really dig in to drawing and illustrations. But I have bought toys and bought different devices to be able to draw. Like I've got the iPad Pro with a pencil so I can draw on the iPad. But again, it all comes down to having the time and having that imagination to be able to get that down and, working through all the different issues. Being ADD and ADHD, it's been kind of troubling for me to really get into it. But I see that you've done an amazing job. So tell me a little bit about your story. Tell us, how you got into this and what fascinates you.
Well, yeah, that's going to be a very long story.
No problem. We've got time.
Yeah. Well, I've always drawn, since I can remember. I've been holding a pencil, and it's really I come from a very creative family. So my mom is also a freelance artist. She used to be a graphic designer, and then she started to do her own paintings, and she was like, I want to do that for a living. And my grandparents got to know each other through a drawing course. They met while drawing. So yeah, it's like I'm in third generation, the creative one again in my family. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, it's really great because you have this support already from the family. Really helped me a lot throughout the years to grow and to know that I'm going to be okay, because I also have a very supportive dad who doesn't really understand my work all the time, but he's very proud of what I'm doing anyway. So that's really great. And yeah, well, I think I was 15 when I discovered what I really wanted to do for a living, that it definitely was going to be art. And this actually started with an exhibition of the animation studio Pixar. You might be familiar with it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. They had, I think, 25th anniversary exhibition, and they went around the world. And this exhibition also was in Hamburg, which was really nice. So we got to go there, and I just entered the room and I saw all of these amazing drawings and all of this concept art and the sculptures they did of the characters and step-by-step animation. And I honestly started to cry because I felt so at home.
Yeah.
And then I just knew that this was what I wanted to do. And this was actually the start of a very hard phase, because the moment I knew what I wanted to do, I didn't really felt at home at my school anymore. It was very extremely stressful. Like 10th grade in Germany is absolute hell. But what I heard in the end from other friends all around the world is that the school system doesn't seem to be great anywhere,
Yeah,
ex-
that's
except
true.
for Finland. Finland does fine, I heard, like perfectly
Mhm.
fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, then at the time when I was in 10th grade, my mom just started she had a job as a tutor
Mm.
at a graphic design school. And so I got to go there sometime, and I saw some of the exhibitions they had 2 times a year, every time the students graduated and wanted to show their work. And school was so stressful that I got extremely sick. Like I was sick all the time. I had panic attacks at school,
Oh my God.
and I couldn't breathe anymore. And it was just pure horror. So then at some point, my mom and I started thinking, okay, when I get through 10th grade, the school stuff in the system of Germany is a bit complicated because there are different kinds of schools and educations. But if you pass 10th grade at the school I was at, I would have like the qualities to go to a different school if I
Mhm.
wanted to. So I had two very amazing teachers who taught my class, who really supported me and were like, why don't you just go to this graphic design school that your mom's working on? Like, you might be very young, but I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe you can talk to the principal, and maybe if you're good enough and if you get along with the older students, maybe it's going to work out.
Hmm.
So that's what we did after my dad was extremely scared that
Yeah.
I wasn't going to make it and that I would be completely lost if I didn't finish school all the way through 12th grade
Hmm.
like everybody else did. So he was like totally against it at first. It took a lot of convincing
Hmm.
until he gave it a chance. But it all worked out perfectly. It was absolutely heaven sent. Like everything fell into place, and I recovered from my illness almost immediately the
Mm.
moment that I went to this graphic design school, and I made
Yeah.
a lot of friends, and I was really happy.
Yeah.
And I graduated just 3.5 years later with 19 in March 2016.
Nice.
And it was, yeah, seriously, just everything went so well. And I think that was definitely the greatest time of my life.
Nice. I hear a lot of parallels of support from
Yeah.
parents, from teachers, and that is super, super important. And I see that parallel in a lot of different areas, for example, for musicians and athletes and artists like yourself. Like no matter what it is, like people like kids get to be really good at what they love to do when they get that support.
Yes, it's so crucial. Like it's funny. Like I could also see in the family what happens if you don't get that support. Because my dad, for example, he's a very closed person.
Mhm.
He's not very emotional, even though everybody who knows him he
Mhm.
won't notice it. You only notice it when you're really close to him.
Of course.
His parents forced him, it kind of forced him to become a doctor. And
Mm.
I'm pretty sure that if he didn't get forced to do it, that
Mhm.
he would have gone into architecture, because
Mhm.
that's just, I notice every single time when we go on a trip together to a city or just do anything together, that architecture is just something he talks all the time. It makes him super happy. And sometimes I wonder what would have been if he would have pursued that career and
Yeah.
went into that. But on the other side, it's him being a doctor. He's totally fine with it. He's okay
Mhm.
with it, but it caused a lot of problems at
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, I think so. When you mentioned that, your father was forced into going into medical school, becoming a doctor. So even though he had to sacrifice his dreams, he was able to provide the shelter and the affordances for you and your mom to go into their passions and their
Yeah.
and build upon their dreams.
Yes.
So it always takes a sacrifice of one person to see. I mean, and that's what, you know, the first generation immigrants, for example, in the United States, you know, they have to go through those same struggles. So
Yeah.
I work
Mm.
super hard so then my kids don't have to. So
Yeah.
they have the choice of going into the areas that they absolutely love to do. So
Yes.
that's really amazing.
Mm. No, I'm very grateful for my family. Like I don't know where I'd be right now without them. I'm really happy to have them.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, and well, the project that I graduated with
Mhm.
back then in 2016, that was like a first draft of the first book I then published a year later. In German, we call it Die geheime Welt der Gartendrachen, and English translation would be The Secret World of Garden Dragons,
Mhm.
which is, yeah, you might have seen a few posts with some strange looking dragons and a couple of bees.
Mhm.
Because back when I studied,
Yeah.
and I still had the question in mind, okay, so what am I going to do with my graduation project? Because
Yeah.
we had like total freedom of
Mhm.
what we could choose. It was all about the graphic design and how we could present ourselves like as a business or like a
Mhm.
creative project, like a little studio
Yeah.
or a book. So I was like, okay, I would definitely love to do a book. And then I was like, okay, what's that book going to be about?
Yeah.
Uh, then when I was on, like, I think a few weeks before my mom and I went on vacation,
Mhm.
I noticed how incredibly scarce the insects in our garden had gotten.
Mhm.
Like, we heard a lot about the decline of insects and bees,
Yes.
and we live more on the countryside of our city. Like, we're still very connected to the city of Hamburg, but we're like on the outer ring.
Mhm. The outer ring.
So
Okay.
we have a lot of fields and meadows and riding stables and farmers here. So like I'm very close to the wildlife here in nature.
Yeah.
Our neighbor, for example, is a beekeeper as well. So
Mhm.
we're very close connected to nature. And then when you go outside and you see on your own doorstep how the insects that flew around like 5 years ago in masses everywhere in a garden
Yeah.
have all disappeared. That
Mhm.
was so scary and
Yeah.
absolutely terrifying to me that it was clear to me. So I wanted to do something. I really wanted to do something against that. And then when we went on vacation, I, as usually, had my sketchbook with me and I went outside and there was this bush of honeysuckle.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you ever saw the flowers of honeysuckle, but they're very long and they look very unique. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh, maybe I can sketch that. Maybe I'm going to draw that. So I
Mhm.
took one of those flowers and I turned it around a bit. And I was like,
Yeah.
it kind of looks a bit like a dragon's head.
Yeah. Mhm.
Then it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And just everything in my head started to spin. And I started to get so many ideas of like, that's what I can do. I can make a book about tiny dragons who
Yeah.
camouflage themselves
Mhm.
as flowers. And through these tiny garden dragons, I could make a book about the importance of bees and that these dragons are like the sworn protectors
Mhm.
of bees because they depend on the pollination of their flowers
Yeah.
through bees. So that's how the book concept started. And
That's
that
really
was
cool.
my graduation project.
Mhm.
And a year later, after I worked on my portfolio, because I was actually planning to go on an internship, but that
Mhm.
never happened in the end.
Yeah.
But I did find a publisher very quickly when I started to focus on my graduation project again.
Yeah.
And well, now I'm a freelance illustrator and author, and we just published another pocket book about the garden dragons, and I'm pretty sure this is just going to continue because I have a lot of ideas on how to expand on that concept, and especially I want to focus on wild bees more in the future.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about decline of bees, the first thing that always comes to mind, usually for like the normal people who don't really know much about bees, is of course the honeybee, which we get our honey from. There are barely any people who know how many different wild bee species we have around the world. And I think, I'm not sure about the number of bees around the world. I think like over 20,000 different bees. Yeah, it's really amazing. And in Germany alone, I think there are around 500 bees. And it's just incredible. Like I've been focusing on bees for like 3 years now, but only last year I really started to focus on wild bees and wild bee species in Germany. And it's so fascinating. There's so much to learn, and especially how specific these bees are in what they eat, which flowers they pollinate, and how extremely fragile they are because how specified they are. So they need very specific flowers to even live.
Absolutely. And it's really amazing. You're mentioning how many different wild bees there are. And whenever I talk about honeybees in the United States, and I tell them, honeybees are not native to the United States. They come from Europe. The native bees that are in trouble, whenever anybody says, the bees are in trouble, they're talking about those native bees. And these native bees can be carpenter bees, mason bees, bumblebees.
Yeah.
So many bees that are native pollinators of United States. But and now honeybees, they do have a problem where they have a big problem with the Varroa mite disease.
Yeah, ours too. Yeah.
Hive, right? So that's one of the problems the beekeepers are facing. Then still, beekeeping, it's more or less domesticated.
Yeah.
And urban beekeepers are on the rise. And like, for example, this spring class that we had for beekeeping, there was at least 35 new beekeepers.
Wow.
So every year, there's more and more coming into the fold. And the state has, programs where they're giving away beehives. So more and more beekeepers can come and help with the pollination problem that we're having.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely necessary to also teach people about the native bees and plant the plants that are specific for those native bees.
Yeah.
Like in our house, we have this huge bush and we get these white flowers in spring, and right now it's all white. It's beautiful. And I see a lot of bumblebees and carpenter bees coming, and they're just going in there and then they're coming out, and you see it's really beautiful. Yeah. So I'm super amazed. I'm super fascinated with garden dragons because that's a really neat concept.
Yeah.
Super illustrative way. And I'm trying to find an English version of the book because I think the site directly
that would be great. Yeah, that's the thing. Like we've been trying to publish it in English for around 1.5 years now, and we do have contacts, but the thing is, we don't really get anything back. They seem to be stressed out and busy enough with probably the other 10,000 of books.
I'm sure.
They every day.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked my publisher, is it okay if I advertise it more online?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're very open for any contacts, like any publisher who might be interested to publish it in English. Because we have a finished translation. It's already Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
I know a couple of publishers myself.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And they're into book publishing. I'm sure they know the right contacts to get your, Garden Dragons published in English out here,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it would
Oh,
be it would
that
be
would,
really awesome for my
yeah.
kids to even read it, right?
That would be amazing. You can just show them my website. I have this whole section. If you probably already saw it.
I'm
Of
already looking at it right now.
yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. It's really amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, my publisher, the last idea he had for promoting the book more so that we might get the right context was
Mhm.
that since we already have the translation
Mhm.
ready, his idea was that maybe we could publish in ebook version
Mhm.
online. So
Yep.
that,
Self-publishing, so that you can get up to Amazon pretty
yeah,
quickly. Yeah.
yeah. So, but of course, if we have the ebook version, the cards are still all open that somebody can publish the printed
Sure.
version. So the
Sure.
rights for that are still there, definitely.
Yeah. The other thing that you could also do is, I haven't noticed an Instagram channel. I'm not sure if you have an Instagram yet,
Uh,
but
yeah.
an
No.
Instagram just for the Garden Dragons,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that way you can focus. And Instagram's on the rise right now. It's
Ah.
stupid crazy in the US. People are flocking to Instagram like
Oh
no other.
wow.
And there's some huge. So I did notice that there's a hashtag Eleanor Bick, where
Yeah, that's funny.
there's two tags, and
Hmm.
I think somebody probably bought your book, and
Yes.
Kara Kara Beakerworm. I don't know if you know her.
Yeah, it's so funny because like I have an Instagram account that I just never used until this point, but
Uh,
people apparently still noticed that I was there and
yeah,
they hashtagged me, and
yeah,
it was super sweet and super surprising. And
yeah.
yeah, there were like I think 2 or 3 posts on Instagram of proud German buyers of the book.
Mm-hmm.
It was very sweet. And
Yeah.
yeah,
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. In fact, I'm recording this on my phone. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So go ahead, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
I didn't use Instagram really until now because I barely use my phone.
Oh, I totally get it. I totally get it.
I like.
Absolutely.
I wish I could just directly upload stuff from my computer to
Mhm.
Instagram. It's very
There is
frustrating.
actually a way. You have a way to do it. So there's
Oh,
an application called later.com. There's actually a few of them, and these are
oh,
essentially social media marketing sites, and you can schedule posts up to 60 days in advance.
oh!
Right? So you
Wow.
can say, okay, I want this post to go out today, this post to go out tomorrow, this post to go out the day after. You can upload videos, you can upload, small
Yeah.
illustrations from your book. And I
Mhm.
also see Hamburg Paradise.
Yeah.
They're the
That's
I think they're the publisher, right, for your book.
yeah. That's I think that's the name of our shop. Of our,
That's it. Okay.
yeah.
So through the
Mhm.
shop, there's a couple of tags to
Ah.
the Garden Dragons. I see.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that you can use social media for your advantage. I mean, I found you
Yeah.
through Twitter, right? Right.
Mm.
So just using these media effectively is a mind blown. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I find it so charming that you found me like not only through the bee's knees video, which by the way was more of a parody. I don't actually have plans for a TV series.
I know it did look like a parody. I mean,
yeah.
music sounds something from the 80s.
Yes, I know. Like one of my friends, Sophie, who studies in Britain, she used this theme song for a sketch video that she made with a friend because she's studying film. And I asked her if it was okay if I used that same song again, because I told her, Sophie, it's just so perfect. I have this idea for this sketch with a bee sitcom, and this is like the best sitcom sound ever. And she was like, yeah, do whatever you want, must.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really good to have connections that have these talents, and then you go like, hey, let's collaborate, and now you get something beautiful.
Oh yeah, that's the best. Absolutely.
And so this video is great, and I think
what
on YouTube.
Yeah, and what I wanted to say, not only that you found me through this video, but that you like my little Pokemon comics so much. That's really sweet, and I'm so happy about that.
So I have 3 kids. I have a 9-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old, right? So the 9-year-old, he's been crazy about Pokemon for the past 4 years, and talks about Pokemon. Like now he's into Beyblades and whatnot, but when he used to talk about Pokemon, and when the Pokemon Go app came out for your phones, and you can walk around and find on your phone, right? So I did that myself. So I have some connection through that popular culture. And when I saw the illustration, I was like, "Oh my God, this is a Pokemon, and it looks so beautiful." Anything unlike the animated or the manga drawings. So yeah, that was fascinating, and I was like, "All right, there's like multiple connections between you and I." It's like, "Oh, we gotta have this talk."
Oh yeah. When I saw your bio, it was an instant plus also for me. Not only that you were a beekeeper, but that you also really love photography, because that's actually another hobby of mine. Like whenever the sun is shining outside and we have perfect weather, I just love to go outside with my camera and go on a walk to find new inspiration for my work. And I love to take pictures of flowers and insects, or like if the lighting is just perfect and you have a beautiful landscape in front of you, it's just so much fun.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. This was very exciting talking with you and looking at your journey. And even though it was, you've just started, you already got, I mean, I could see like you doing some really great work in the future.
Thank you so much.
Get on that path. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like one of the questions that I ask my guests is like, what is one hobby that you wish you got into? And you're already in that hobby.
Yeah.
your passion and your reality. So
yes,
we could
that's
totally
true.
Skip that one.
That's very true. Yeah, and I'm very excited to see what this year is going to bring for me, because there's so much I want to do. And like next year, we're going to publish another book, and that's going to be my first novel, my actual first adventure story with the dragons. I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh my God.
And otherwise, I'm currently spending a lot of time filming wild bees. I'm thinking about maybe doing like a video for YouTube, a bit like a documentary, or more like a video talking about wild bees with a bit of humor sprinkled in to teach people about what we can do. And otherwise, I'm gonna continue my comics, because I just love storytelling in every form, and it really brings me a lot of joy.
That's really cool. And so what was really fascinating about what you're telling me about doing a documentary on the wild bees.
Yeah.
Well, we had the opportunity to do a short documentary on beekeeping and beekeepers
Oh,
themselves.
nice.
We talk a lot about bees, but what
Hmm.
about the beekeepers who spend so much time in making sure the survival of bees and the affordances that they have to go through to provide homes and sustenance for bees to survive. So
Yeah.
we did a little short documentary last month, and if you get a chance, check it out on my YouTube channel.
Oh, that's really nice.
That's fun. And we're thinking to making a long form, because right now it's only 4 minutes, but we were thinking of making a long form documentary
Mhm.
where we talk to even more beekeepers all around the area that I live in, over here in DC, Virginia, and Maryland. And we have about 200 beekeepers in my club here in Virginia. There's about 400 beekeepers in Maryland.
Wow.
There's a lot of people that do beekeeping around here, and my neighbor just recently also started beekeeping this year, so I'm super
Oh,
excited to be a mentor to them. Yeah.
oh, that's so sweet. Oh, I'm really looking forward to that little documentary you guys are
Oh,
doing.
thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm really super, what's the word, fascinated and super thankful that you decided to come on and have a chat, and
Yeah.
forward to the Garden Dragons in English,
Yes.
uh, and your shorts. And so some question that I like to ask
Yeah.
our guest: what is your favorite movie or TV show?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question because I'm very into animation, so I have a lot of favorites.
Yeah.
But I did think about it yesterday, and I was like, I think like my most recent favorite movie would be Coco from Pixar,
Mhm. Oh, that's
which
really good.
I loved a lot because I just love it when we get to see different cultures in
Oh, yeah.
movies and different traditions from all around the world. And like, because I love to learn about people and their cultures, I wish we'd see uh, more movies about like maybe specific African cultures or Native
Mhm.
American stories or
Mhm.
legends and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
Coco was a really heartfelt movie.
Mhm.
And I loved the story to no end. And it was
Yeah.
incredibly creative what they added to the legends and stories around Dias de los Muertos.
Mhm.
And there's another tiny studio in Ireland, Cartoon Saloon,
Mhm.
also steps more into exploring the different cultures and does a lot of movies about Irish history and Irish legends. And I hope that's going to become a trend where we just see all kinds of facets of all different cultures and countries all around the world, because there's so much to explore and so much potential in writing great stories if we just try to go into something different and new that we didn't look at before.
That's a really good point. I like that. And with the advent of the internet and animation technologies coming more and more accessible to the rest of the world, I think we're going to see a lot more of
Yes.
cultural stuff,
Yeah.
animations. And if you've ever had the chance to check out Kickstarter, there's always little campaigns starting up to do little animated movies, or
Yes.
short films and whatnot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of culture. I mean, there's so many stories in this world, because we're 7.5 billion people in this world, and
Yeah.
it's amazing, right? And when you just
Yeah.
grow up in just your own culture and your own thing, it's like, okay, I want to look out and see the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm.
Fantastic. All right. The next question is, who is your favorite superhero?
Oh, superhero. I'd have to go with a very classic superhero. Like I'd go for Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Okay.
Yes, it's that was my first
Hmm.
favorite superhero as a child, and
Hmm.
I loved every movie.
Yeah.
Uh, was in cinema with Spider-Man, and I couldn't really explain why. I just thought the costume was super cool, and I thought Peter Parker was a very sympathetic character.
Yeah.
Um, with the Marvel movies, like superhero movies, have
Hmm.
really gone in fashion like for years now. I
Yeah.
don't know when it all started. And I watched a couple of those, but it has gotten so there are so many of those superhero movies at this point
Yes.
that I can't keep up. I think the last one I saw was Ant-Man, and then
Mhm.
I was like, oh god, it kind of became like a core to watch all of these movies from the Marvel Cinematic Universe to
Yeah.
understand the next one.
Hmm.
And that was a bit, yeah, that was a bit too much to ask for me.
Well, there's a total of 24 movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the first three phases, which started with Iron Man in 2008,
Yes, that one I watched. Yeah.
right? And
Mm.
it was the first one is one of my favorite movies, mainly because you see his struggle, you see how he uses his mind to put
Yeah.
things together. And so
Mm.
that was super fascinating to me. And I was like, that's where I live. That's
Yeah.
that's what I function myself. Like I'm always putting things together and
Mm.
figuring out how things work. And so that was super fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So there's 6 movies for phase one, 5 movies in phase two, and phase three has a total of 8, 9, 10, 11 movies.
Yeah.
And I just had the opportunity to go see the last movie.
Oh, nice.
And wow, is all I can say.
Was it as good as everyone hoped for?
Oh yeah,
I hope.
absolutely.
Oh, that's great.
They saved the best for last. They saved
Oh,
the best for
that's
last.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the reactions of a couple of friends,
Hmm.
and I spoiled myself a little bit because
Sure.
I wasn't sure if I ever was going to watch any of those movies. But now that I know a bit of context
Yeah.
to the last one, I'm actually reconsidering to watching all of the rest of the
Yeah.
movies because
Yeah.
I was like, okay, no, this sounds pretty good. I want to watch and experience that now with
Yeah.
everybody else.
So what had also happened is we had a kind of a spoiler with Spider-Man Away from Home
Oh.
trailer also.
Mhm.
Is there so and that came out about a couple months ago where we have a trailer of a Spider-Man movie that's that came after the Avengers Endgame. And it kind of gave away the ending of the Endgame that okay, Spider-Man right.
Oh, okay.
So that's been out in the open on and if you don't follow Marvel, you probably didn't see the trailer for the Spider-Man Away from Home,
No.
Far From
No, I
Home or
didn't see.
whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, so overall it was a nicely done movie and couldn't have asked for a better one at all.
That's
And
great.
I kept I was like, I'm not gonna listen to any commentary whatsoever. I'm just gonna wait and see the movie for myself and make my
Yeah.
conclusions. But yeah, it was super fascinating. All right, last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
If I were a board game,
Hmm.
hmm, now that's an interesting question. I think I don't really have a specific answer because
Hmm.
as a child, I actually tried to come up with the board game
Oh, nice.
myself, and of course it was nature themed because
Yeah.
what else. And I had a couple of cards glued together. It
Hmm.
was like a quiz game where you had dices you on some specific fields, you'd have to get a card and answer a question. So it was like a quiz about nature,
Mm-hmm.
and the one with the most points, like those who could answer the most questions,
Yeah.
they would move forward much quicker. So
Nice.
like whoever knew more would and could answer the most questions would
Yeah.
probably in the end. I never finished the concept, but
Sure.
that was my idea.
I think now you can, because now you have the book to back it up, right? You have
That's
the book,
true.
and you
It's
can
still, yeah.
make that connection. Because I was talking to somebody else and they were like, they've been writing like different books, and I was like, you could totally convert that into a board game, because just like there's so many books published every month, there's a lot of board games that are also published every month.
That's true. Yeah.
So it could totally relate and connect with your garden dragons.
Yeah, a little bee quiz and
Yeah, a little bee quiz in there.
about the plants the dragons live in or something
Yes.
like
And
that. Yeah.
you can have a storytelling going in there as well, right? Because a lot of these board games have storytelling.
Oh,
And,
that's true.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, I never thought about the storytelling aspects in
Yeah.
board games. Yeah, that's right.
Because there's a board game that I recently got. It was I can't remember. So they came up with a running app, and
Mhm.
you basically turn this app on and you're running, and it's called Zombie Run. So the storytelling is that you're running out in the woods, and this, it's
Mhm.
apocalyptic, and you're running, and then every once in a while you'll hear there's zombies chasing you in your
Oh God.
earphones, right? So now you got to run faster, and then you get to a checkpoint, or you get to a point where there's safety, and then basically there's a whole storyline around it.
Yeah.
So that was like 6 years ago that this app came out, and then they kept updating the version, updating the story, and now they finally have a board game around it. And I'm sure
Oh,
they
nice.
have a book around it too, right? But you already got all of the content, and now you can like make a story around your garden dragons. I mean, you already have a story in the book.
Yeah.
Convert that into a board game.
Mm.
So that would be pretty fascinating.
Yeah, that's a nice idea.
You're welcome.
I didn't I didn't consider that yet. That's really nice. Thank you.
That's why I like to talk to like so many different talents in so many different areas, because so you're focused into drawing and focused into coming up with the story of, but I think of the different ways you can promote, because essentially
Yeah.
you're just promoting yourself, your books and everything, and
Mm.
many different ways you can promote,
Yeah,
the better you are in the end.
that's true.
So yeah.
So we just keep inspiring each other. That's really
Exactly.
nice.
Keep
Yeah.
collaborating, keep inspiring, and keep going, moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Last question would be, where can my audience find you if they wanted to get in touch with you, see more of what you're up to?
Yeah, they can find me on both Twitter, Tumblr, and on YouTube under the name Elbdot. That's ELBDOT.
Okay.
Or you can go on my website, where also there are all other social media links, Eleanor Bick. I just said that in German automatically. And I also, if you follow me on Twitter and Tumblr, I sometimes post links to my Twitch channel, because I do live streams from time to time. So then
Nice.
people can see me drawing. Yes.
Very cool. I'm gonna have to check out those Twitch channels, because it just fascinates me to watch people draw. It's like, whoa, like all the
Yeah.
arcs.
I have the last thing I have that's still the newest edition is like this. I don't have a Patreon, but I have a Ko-fi, this
Okay.
one where you can just support artists however you please with a
Nice.
little donation every now and then. And that's again Elbdot, ELBDOT.
Perfect. I'll make sure to include the links to the show notes. So I don't even
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
So that way people can just go to the show notes, click, and then get to you. Well,
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time. This was awesome.
Yeah, this was really nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Best of luck and looking forward to your journey.
Yeah, thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode on Hacks and Hobbies. We absolutely appreciate your contribution. You can find additional notes on hacksandhobbies.com. Please share the podcast with your friends and tell them what you learned about our guest today.